Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on registering with the Commission and completing importer-user questionnaires. My name is Bianca D'Angelo's, spokesperson for the Alliance for Affordable Solar Energy, or AFASA. AFASA is an alliance of over 120 companies active in solar that believe free trade and open markets are key to a competitive European solar industry. These firms have joined AFASA to build a voice for the European industry to speak out against the negative impacts of market protectionism. As a service to industry, AFASA will be hosting a series of webinars to educate solar industry companies on the recently launched anti-dumping investigation and how to protect your rights. This complaint could result in significant cost increases for industry, and we aim to inform you how to engage in the EU Commission investigation process, protecting your right to a voice in the upcoming 15-month investigation. To begin our webinar for today, please let me introduce Ms. Paulette van der Schuren, partner with the law firm Meyer Brown in Brussels. Ms. van der Schuren brings over 30 years' experience in both anti-dumping and other trade dispute resolutions. Ms. van der Schuren, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ms. DeAngelis. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Let me mention before we go into the details of the presentation that if you have any question at any given time during this presentation, you are welcome to type your question in the chat box. This will be anonymous, and then after the presentation we'll be happy to look at the questions and try to respond to as many as possible. During today's presentation, we will touch upon a few issues which are a bit the follow-up of the previous webinars we've done, but now to specify what are the products concerned as mentioned now in the notice of initiation. Is your company a user of the product concerned? And what are the roles of the users in an investigation? How could you as users notify the European Commission that you wish to cooperate in the investigation? Also, the objectives that you may seek to achieve in responding to the user questionnaire and guidance on completion of this questionnaire. First, the product concerned. Well, we mentioned in the previous webinars that the product concerned would be modules, cells, and wafers, and that's exactly what has been mentioned in the notice of initiation. The product concerned is not only the crystalline silicon photovoltaic modules or panels, but include also cells and wafers that are used in these crystalline silicon panels or modules up to a given thickness. What is now specified in terms of exclusion of the product concerned scope are the solar chargers that consist of less than 6 cells, are portable and supply electricity to devices or charge batteries. Also the thin film photovoltaic products, and you may know that thin film photovoltaic products were also excluded in the ongoing US investigation. And then last, are also excluded from the investigation the crystalline silicon photovoltaic products that are permanently integrated into electronic or electrical goods. So these type of products are not product concern, which also means that they should not become subject to anti-dumping measures if and when such measures are imposed. The product concern scope is also defined by reference to the tariff headings that apply to these products in the EU's tariff nomenclature, the so-called combined nomenclature. There's a list of tariff headings, but there are 3 types basically. The first one is the 3881 subheading 0010, which is the subheading that covers the wafers. The 8501 heading covers solar products that is qualified basically as electric motors, and then the 8541 is really the key heading, at least for non-wafers, since it covers photovoltaic cells, whether or not assembled into modules and panels. You may have seen that all of these headings are preceded by the words X or EX. That means that out of all the products falling in these subheadings, only those matching the description in slide 3 are actually concerned, and if there's any other products in these headings, these products are not covered by the investigation. Who brought the complaint? In the previous webinars, we said that most complainants were anonymous, that so far only SolarWorld and Solvello were known. A few additional names have been identified in the complaint. Companies Azimut, Brandoni, Capello, Energica, and VPN. And I apologize because this list should also still have mentioned Solvello, that is also among the complainants. The other complainants, the other companies supporting the complaint to date are still anonymous. Now the key question is, are you a user? And the user of the product concerned can be very wide. It can be a company that purchases modules, panels, cells, or wafers, and then assembles these, especially wafers and cells, into panels, but can also be a company that uses the product to manufacture larger solar installations. They can be end users of the solar products, private consumers or suppliers, solar installers, which may already be in the first category, system integrators, engineers, in short, everybody who's directly or indirectly involved with the solar products that are concerned and whose economic well-being depends on the well-being of the solar energy market in the EU. On an aside, again, suppliers of raw materials components can also make known their views, as well as suppliers of equipment. But if they want to make known their views, they should too contact the Commission and obtain a specific questionnaire for suppliers. We will not touch upon this today. If there are any questions, then Afaze will be very happy to respond to those. What is the role of the users in this investigation? Well, the Commission will have to determine during the investigation if there is dumping and if there is injury caused by the dumping prices, at least in the Commission's mind, whether the imposition of anti-dumping measures are in the union's interest. And the union's interest covers not only the interests of the EU producers, but also those of the users. So the Commission will have to determine what is the impact of the anti-dumping measures on the users. We have included in this slide 7 an excerpt taken from the complaint, and I draw your attention to paragraph 210 that says that considering how fast prices have fallen and to what degree, it is highly unlikely that measures would have any noticeable effect on the long-term trend of module price declines, which are technology-driven. Now, the first thing that users can do, of course, is to say whether they agree or disagree, and if they disagree, for what reasons they disagree with the statements by the complainant. Because after all, this is part of the elements that the Commission will have to take into account in determining what would be the impact on downstream and upstream industry of opposing measures. But secondly, also have a look at paragraph 211, which is also quoted there, because that reads, in any event, users and installers would still have many alternative sources of supply to choose from, both within and outside the EU. Thus, anti-dumping measures would have no significant impact on downstream users. So what the complainant is saying, if anti-dumping measures would be imposed on Chinese products, then first it claims that the Chinese products would still be sold on the EU market, but in addition, people could turn easily to EU producers or to other producers such as producers in Japan or South Korea or the US in order to substitute the Chinese materials for these other materials. So it's here that the users can have their say, to argue this is true, not true. We experience on an everyday basis this in the solar market, and we are going to be significantly affected by any anti-dumping measures that are imposed. Now, what can be done is to indeed step forward with the Commission, write to the Commission, or respond to a user questionnaire, participate in oral hearings to say, look, this again is what we see the market having been done in the last few years. If measures were imposed, this is how it will affect the market, and this is how it will in particular affect our business. At the same time, you can do this and at the same time stress that either the EU producers are not suffering injury, or if they are suffering injury, that this injury is not caused by imports from China, but is caused by other factors, and in particular, for example, the consolidation that solar markets all over the world are undergoing at this point of time. What can you do to achieve all this? Well, the first step is to make yourself known with the Commission. You may have seen the Notice of Initiation. The Notice of Initiation basically invites all interested parties, including the users, to step forward and say, Commission, we are users, we are interested parties, we want to safeguard our rights, and we want to participate alongside you in this investigation so that you have the proper information from the different participants in the market. The way to do that is to write a short letter by the deadline, which is the 21st of September 2012. That letter can be emailed to the email address that the Commission has opened, and which is mentioned there, Trade Solar Injury at EC Europa EU. AFASE has on its website a model letter. Now this model letter is exactly what it says. It's a model letter that contains all the information, the minimum information needed to safeguard your rights, and gives a different number of options to fit your specific activities, whether you purchase, whether you import, whether you install, repair, maintain. You are system integrators. You have different options to choose from and to, again, as I said, maintain your rights. You can perfectly, and you would be welcome to adjust this letter more to your specific companies in order to fix exactly what it is you are doing. Now the second step then is the questionnaire for users. The EU normally issues in any anti-dumping investigation a questionnaire for users. To date, that questionnaire in this specific investigation into solar products has not yet been issued. It will probably come in the next few days or after the users have made themselves known. As soon as it is available, AFASE will then diffuse it or will keep you informed as to its availability and the content thereof. What we are doing for today is using a questionnaire that the EU used in 2012 in another investigation. We cannot, of course, guarantee that the questions for the solar products investigation will be exactly the same, but the tenor and content will not be very different in any event. At this very moment, the deadline for users to respond to this questionnaire and send this questionnaire to the European Commission is October 15th. Now, the fact of the matter is that 1 week after the Notice of Initiation was issued, the questionnaire is still not available, so it is highly likely that the deadline of the 15th of October will be postponed. We will give you the exact deadline as soon as we know it from the Commission, or AFASE will certainly put it on its website. The information in the user questionnaire is precisely to achieve what we've mentioned, i.e., what is the impact on your businesses of anti-dumping measures? How will your profitability be affected? And the Commission, what will the Commission do? It will take as many responses to questionnaires as it has received and distill from that a general trend to determine whether or not the users will be badly affected by measures, and if they are badly affected, whether this outweighs the interests of the EU producers. So the more users are coming forward, the more accurate, I would say, would be the basis for determination of the Commission. Some of the information in the user questionnaire is specific and relevant only to those of the users who purchase solar products from China and who then manufacture this into a finished module or into a larger system, the assemblers, the installers, or even the system integrators. Others that are basically only providing services will find some questions relevant for them. Does that mean that they should not respond to a questionnaire? I think not. I think that the questions that are not directly specific to your type of businesses, if you provide services, can be left blank, but that there are other questions that are very important and that you should respond to as well. You can also give data on your profitability and show that if demand would be shrinking because of anti-dumping measures, then your businesses would be shrinking as well, and your profitability would be at stake, and your employment would be at stake. So to that extent, those questions in the questionnaire are equally relevant for you. The main sections of the questionnaire are listed in slide 13. Rather than going over this, let's look at each individually. The first question is an easy one. It simply asks where you're located, what your address is, who to email. So to that extent, very easy. The second question is a question about the shareholding of your company. Who are the shareholders? What percentage of shareholding do they hold? And what are their activities? Now this is to have a view of the group as such. Are there other members of the group that are equally involved in the solar activities and who should also be taken into account in making the assessment? The Commission will ask for an organization chart of your company and a structure of the group. Now why is that? That will be linked also to the question about what is the relevance of the solar products in your overall business. If your business is involved, say, with wind energy, and the wind energy is in terms of the section and the organization more important than the solar energy, that will give a first idea as to what the impact on the anti-dumping measures may be on the overall company business. Table B4 that you see on slide 16 asks for specific information regarding related companies, your shareholding in the related company, or the related company's shareholding in your company. It is related to the earlier question on shareholding, and there is simply a need for consistency, or at least to provide one table with the information consolidating the two questions. The questionnaires also ask for your total range of products, list the solar products, but list also the other products or services that you supply. Again, this is an indication of what the importance may be of the solar product in your total supply of products and services. There's a question about brochures, that is simple enough, and then there's a question about the location of the accounting records, because the Commission might very well decide to come and visit some of the users, and then it wants to know exactly what site to visit, because the site that it will choose will be the site that has the accounting records. There is a section on comparisons in the questionnaire, and what is being asked is to provide the characteristics of the solar products that are manufactured in the EU vis-à-vis the solar products manufactured in China, vis-à-vis the solar products that are manufactured elsewhere in the world. And why is that? There's two reasons for that basically. One, there's an allegation that the Chinese product prices are much lower than those of EU products and those of solar products from other countries. Now, one of the reasons might be, I'm not saying that it is, but it's one of the reasons for the Commission to ask, is to determine, are there differences in functionalities between the different products? Are there differences in the composition of the product that could explain the differences in prices? And if so, the Commission will have to make an adjustment. The fact that they're raising this question with the users is simply to have an unbiased view, an unbiased user view as to what is the reality in the marketplace. But secondly, They're also asking for information from solar products imported from countries other than China, such as the US, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, etc. And why is that? That is also to check whether there is an easy substitutability. Are there other sources of supply that the users can turn to fairly rapidly to get the same type of products with the same functionality, with the same quality? Are there alternatives? So this question is a question that is fairly important to answer, because it will also drive some of the assessment that will be made on the union interest. Slide 19 deals with a section in the questionnaire that is a question about purchases. You will see that the table D1 here, is a table that requests by country of origin and by supplier to give volume and units of purchases made of cells, wafers, and modules in 2009, 2010, 2011, and during the investigation period from the 1st of July 2011 to the 30th of June 2012. So it's not linked to only purchases from China, but again, it will give an indication to the EU of what is the trend in purchases from China, and it will give an indication as to whether it's true that users have switched from EU to China-made products. It will also give an indication as to whether you have already another source of supply of solar products that you could further appeal to if anti-dumping measures were imposed. Obviously, also having the value and the volume, the Commission can find an approximate purchase price and also corroborate a trend in purchase prices from different sources. The values are to be shown at net level, net of credit notes and net of discounts on invoice, but costs can be at this stage included in the price. Now that makes it a bit technical, so let's go to the next slide, which is a question that also typically comes back in user questionnaires and asks for a detailed explanation to enhance on what the table already asked, is to have not only the list of the suppliers but also the names and also the contact addresses in case the Commission wants to check with them, and also an explanation on how purchase prices are set. Are purchase prices set by way of tender procedures? Are there bids that are offset against one another? What are basically the parameters that are taken into account in determining the purchase price for cells, wafers, and modules? Is it, for instance, based on the fluctuation of the price of an important raw material such as polysilicon? There's also a question about contractual links that your company may have with other companies regarding production, sales, or licensing. There's also a question about compensatory agreements. Now that typically refers to arrangements or contracts that you may have whereby you say, look, I buy so many solar products at this price, but I also have, say, for example, a separate advertisement agreement with a supplier whereby the supplier agrees to participate in the cost of the advertisement or promotion, which is effectively actually reducing the cost of the purchase of the product itself. That is what the Commission has in mind. There's a question about who are you buying from? Are you buying directly from the producers? Are you buying from an intermediary? Which will also then give an indication as to whether wholesalers, retailers are also an important element in the supply chain, whose interest must also be taken into account. Provide copies of 3 invoices per supplier in the IP. That is to corroborate the price indications that will come out of the in terms of average prices of the table asking purchases in volume and value. Next, the questionnaire will ask information on production. And now that is definitely something, a question that applies specifically to those of you that buy the solar products and then engage into a production process to obtain a finished product that you will then resell with or without supply of services as well to customers. So for instance, you buy wafers, you manufacture the modules, or you buy the modules and you supply and you manufacture a larger system that you resell. The table E1 on the slide E22 asks for the production value and volume of the different type of products that you manufacture with the solar products purchased, and it also asks you then for the sales in volume and value, sales within the EU and separately outside the EU. Again, it asks for trends, and it will give them a trend in terms of the gross margin, i.e. the difference between production value and sales value. That will give also an indication of the, as I said, the historical trend going forward and whether the gross margins tended to increase or tended to decrease. Which is not important because, of course, in the production value, the cost of the solar products will play an important role. There's an information request also to describe the manufacturing, and that is simply to corroborate the production data that you will have shown in the table. Cost of production also asks for a detailed cost of production for each of the end product that incorporates the solar product, and that is basically then the full cost of production broken down into the material cost, direct labor, manufacturing overhead, selling general and administrative expenses, up until the total cost of production. It will give also an idea of the fixed expenses vis-à-vis the variable expenses, which will allow the Commission to refine its opinion on what will be the impact if anti-dumping measures were imposed. As we mentioned on the slide, all the information should be readily reconcilable with your accounts and financial statements, all the more that the audited financial statements will also have to be submitted in attachment to the questionnaire. And then we come to the profitability information that is being requested. Now, the way this is requested may not be entirely fitting the needs of a service supplier, but it can still be used not only for companies like yours that convert the solar products into a finished product or a larger installation. It can also be used for the service suppliers that are involved with the use of solar products, as it can also be used for wholesalers and traders. It requests the breakdown, again, over these years between cost of goods sold, gross sales, credit notes, and net sales turnover, and then selling general administrative expenses, R&D expenses if available, to have gross operating margin and then the net margin. Again, they will build a trend to see what the profitability did in terms of the historical trend, and that will be an important element to determine whether going forward with the impact of the cost of the solar products on your products or on your company, whether this will be, whether the additional cost of the anti-dumping measures, I apologize, can be borne easily within your profits, or whether you will have to reflect it in your sales prices. The profitability data will have to be given first at total company level, which is this table F1 at slide 25, but will also have to be given broken down into the sector that carries the solar products, for sales within the EU and separately for sales outside the EU. Now, what is the achievement there? It is to have an indication of the profitability specifically for the sector that carries the solar products vis-à-vis the profitability company-wide. Having determined what the importance of the sector is into the total company results, the Commission will then determine whether the solar sector is so important that any increase in costs of the solar products being used will definitely have an impact on total company results. For the service suppliers amongst you, that will be more difficult because you cannot measure clearly the impact on your cost of goods sold or the cost of your services sold of these solar products, but you can still build a picture whereby you indicate that the profitability is such that if the market is going to shrink, if your turnover is going to be affected by anti-dumping measures, your profitability company-wide and sector-wide are going to be suffering. How do you respond to this questionnaire? Well, you respond truthfully in accordance with the data in your accounting. Again, as I mentioned, your audited financial statements or non-audited financial statements will have to be submitted as well. It is understood that some of the costs come from bigger cost categories or bigger product categories and need to be allocated, and allocations can be devised, either your internal allocation if you work on a profit and cost center, or based on a turnover allocation will be accepted. Again, your profit results will be key in determining whether or not your businesses will be badly affected by anti-dumping measures. So it's important that you step forward and provide these data to give the Commission an objective yardstick or threshold to determine what the impact will be. Separately, the questionnaire will also ask for investment data. What is the total investment since 2009 at total company level or in the sector that deals with the solar product? Why is that? Well, the question is, has your company engaged in such significant investments into solar products that this will jeopardize those investments and that this will have an important effect on total company investments? Employment is another important element in union interest. The complainant has argued that it has thousands of jobs at stake on the line with the survival of their production unit. The question here is raised is how many jobs are involved at the level of the user industry, and are these jobs at stake if anti-dumping measures were imposed? If you demonstrate that your profitability is at stake and jeopardized through anti-dumping measures, it will also be readily understood that that will mean that you must lay off some employment. This will give some yardstick to assess what the potential impact may be on jobs. There are other questions that do not ask for specific figure data, but that ask for an explanation, and in fact, most of these questions are to corroborate or analyze from your point of view the data that you will have shown in figures. The first question is, try to estimate the development for the consumption of the solar product during the next 3 years. This is a forecast that you may have on development of the solar market in the EU if there were no anti-dumping investigation, if there were no anti-dumping measures. The second question is to try and estimate the development of the consumption of the products that you manufacture from the solar product, or is the development of your service supply, if you interpret it from the point of view of the service suppliers, going forward in an unaffected development of the solar energy market. So the third question is exactly how is your consumption of the product concerned going to develop? That is linked to the two other questions. And the fourth question is the key question, of course. What would be the effect on your company if anti-dumping and between brackets countervailing measures, if and when there may be an anti-subsidy investigation, were imposed on imports of Chinese solar products? Would you be able to change the source of supply? Would you be able to reflect the increased cost in the resale price? Those are the questions that you can address in the response to these questions. And last but not least, in question 7, any aspect that was not yet addressed in the questionnaire, you can address in the response to this question. That finishes the presentation of the sections of the questionnaire. Now your questions may be, do I necessarily have to present this in the format of a real response to a questionnaire? The answer is no, you can do it in any format you wish, but in order to have your arguments being as persuasive as possible, you need to give figure data. You need to substantiate your arguments with figure data, and therefore it may be easier and more persuasive if you did it in the format of the questionnaire, whereby you give trend data and actual cost of production data in the form of a simplified P&L for the years concerned. You will also probably ask and wonder, I'm now being invited to give to the European Commission very confidential data in terms of my costs and of my prices. Can I do this without this being disclosed? The answer is yes. The Commission accepts that data is given, such as costs and prices are given on a confidential basis. And to the best of my knowledge, after 30 years, there have been no leaks of this type of information. However, you will be also requested, if you ask for confidentiality for certain data, you will also be requested to give a non-confidential version of your reply, in which you basically remove the confidential data and claim confidentiality, or for the trend data, set forth instead of giving the actual figures, you give these figures in indices. Slide 33 here gives you an example of how this is typically done. You will be able to see the slide. I guess we will also transmit the presentation to you, and then you will be able to see the slide at ease, but of course we can also answer questions if you have any in this regard. Let me then conclude the presentation with the last element of the schedule. The initiation took place on the 6th of September. The next step is for you to make known yourselves, as we said, by the September 21, to say we are users, we want to participate. Then the next deadline for you as users, we've also given here the deadline for the sampling of the importers, but that is a separate matter. The next deadline for the users is really the 15th of October to do two things. Respond to this questionnaire for users, and if you believe it's relevant, also give your arguments on injury and why EU producers are not suffering injury because of imports from China. The deadline of 15th of October, at least for the questionnaire to the users, may be postponed a bit, since the questionnaire as of now are not available. Bear in mind, for now, the deadline of the 15th of October. Then there are next deadlines are for the sample importers to submit questionnaire responses, but again, we will not go into the details of that. November 2012, March 2013, the EU analyzes and reviews all the data. 5th of June 2013 is the deadline for the European Commission to decide whether or not to impose provisional measures. And the 5th of December 2013 is the deadline to impose definitive measures. That, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my presentation. If you bear with me for a couple of minutes, we will now look at whether you raised questions. We see no questions for the time being. Let me give you a minute or two to possibly still type in any questions you may have. Ladies and gentlemen, I see no questions appearing. So I'm going to thank you for your attendance at this afternoon's webinar and wish you a pleasant end of the afternoon. Thank you.
Dear Ms. Van Skuren, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us today. Thank you very much to the participants of this webinar. We kindly invite you to have a look later tonight under www.apasa.org, where we'll post the sample letters to be sent to the Commission in order to get registered as an interested party. In case you have questions, you're very welcome to get back to us, and we thank you for your support and for your time. Goodbye.